Hey everyone, hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. As always, muchas gracias to everyone for everyone's words, wishes, prayers, as the love and support everyone shares and sends my way. Sincerely, gracias. Also, do please like, share, subscribe, and hype to this video to help support the message. Thank you. Well, everyone, getting right into what I want to speak on today. First and foremost, this video right here ain't to glorify nothing I done. You know, I can sincerely say it was part of where I was at the moment, mindset and everything, and it's just things that happen, right? Also clarify, seen a couple messages on a video I touched on Midget, Woody, and Lalo, right, from Tortilla Flats, and I think and explain myself right. There was a misunderstanding, so I will hopefully try to clear it up at the end of this video. But anyways, I want to take you back to Ironwood, right? And while I was there was an individual that was a camarada, but he was just a resident from Huntington Park, and he was a cool individual up until the point he found out you were doing something for a Pili, right? I don't take nothing from this man, even though he was a resident. He was doing a lot of things for different Pilis, putting a lot of things in their hands, right? And a lot of Pilis spoke good of him, Memo from Huntington Park. And, when he got there, of course, he had what any camarada had coming, right? There, again, there ain't no difference between a camarada and a resident. You're representing the SUR. That's all that matters, right? And anyways, the vato will go out every week, sincerely every week, and he will hit. He will hit, and he preferred, sending feria. For example, he hit and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna give him the amount of 3 grams out of respect, firmes, but I want to send feria, right?" So he would do that on never failed, right? So he was individual of his word. Now, if you know, you guys seen the pictures. That's the only picture I ever took on the main line. It was out there on visit, right? And I remember when that visiting was happening, he was out there and he had his kids and his girl, and you know, none of my business. I should have my looks on, but being the first and only time I went out there and having the jardín, right, for Terco, it was part of my business to see, you know, what went out, what went on out there, who was out there, so that if I ever got asked, I can answer, right? Anyways, this individual, it was every week, right? He would do it, and again, he would take care of a few individuals. A few Pilis had their hand on him, right? He was answering to the Bay, to Corcoran, to Tehachapi. He was doing what he was supposed to as a Sureño, right? So there was never a problem for a long time. Now I want to speak too about the homie from Tortilla Flats, right? He wasn't a youngster, but he had he had maybe a year and a half that he had gotten busted, for a hot one, gangster or G, however you prefer to call him, and was a good individual. He didn't have the clecha, to basically help you, with the building or with the, but he was a good homie, and at the time you heard a lot about Mitch and Woody, you know, and they were spoken of with the utmost respect. Keep in mind, I'd never seen that documentary or video till I got out the joint recently, right? When I started watching on YouTube, I didn't meet them through that documentary, and yes, I heard many times, right? They're the homies that came out in that documentary about T Flats, and I would it was just none of my business, right? I would shine it on, be like, "Oh, is that right?" and leave it alone, because it really didn't matter in there, right? You get measured by your actions. But anyways, with G, he wanted it, it always pushed on, right? Like, hey, let me let me help you, Dick, or this and that. So he worked in the kitchens, not the main kitchen, but in the kitchens, right? And so something small, and I asked him to help out with that. The camaradas are back there, make sure not stayed in line, but you guys get it. Nothing happens to camaradas. Camaradas don't get out of bounds with any other race to start something, just that type of thing, right? And anyways, everything went cool. Now going back to Memo, something happened, and at the end it came out. It's what I mentioned before. Just because people love you, don't mean you could. They're gonna tolerate everything when you're busted. People get tired too, even if they're solid at one point. You keep pushing them and pushing them and pushing them, and then you get involved with more billies. There's promises there. There's responsibilities. So you start laying all the inside responsibilities that you should take care of on your girl, right? That goes to visit you every week. People get tired. People shake. Believe me, they shake. They start by hesitating, by saying they don't want to do it no more. And of course, us being inside in the position, you're gonna push because you're basically you're you're against a wall and a hard place, right? Or you're between, excuse me. And basically, that's what happened, right? Because the first week, nada, and nobody said nothing. It was like, he told me straight out, like, hey, homie, this week I'm not gonna do that because I didn't go out to visit. My girl couldn't come because my kid got sick, whatever. And I told him, cool, you know, hope your kid better up. Don't even trip, as long as you don't go out and bring and move around here. there's no issue, right? And it happened like that for about 4 weeks. And one of the individuals he was answering to up there was tablas and bobo. So they would not get at me, right? They would get at T because they knew that was his yard. He was there. He's being allowed on what was going on. The homie keeps giving us largas that his girl didn't come up, that this, but we had already sent the Halle. The Halle was theirs. Homeboy's girl went out there and just picked it up and brought it in, right? But again, it's like, visit is visit. I understand, it's one of the only avenues to do something, right? In some cases, but here and there, to push your loved one to do it every visit. First off, you're gonna spoil Peelies. Sincerely, you're gonna. So when you can't no more, it's gonna become an issue. They ain't gonna understand what you're going through with your girl or none of that. They don't want to hear that. They want to know why it ain't coming in that way it was, and you gotta make it come in. Period. But they will get a terco. Terco would tell me to get at the vato and see what's happening, right? So I would, and that's when it came out. His girl for a while been fed up, but she was still doing it. Then little by little, she just said, "I ain't receiving nothing. I am bringing nothing," you know. And he thought he could trust a prima of his, right? And his prima got cold feet. Once she was at the prison, outside the prison, and she got cold feet and couldn't go through with it, you know. And I think the ones that actually do it when they're your girls, they do it with the mindset because they love you and they figure they do that for you, you're gonna be able to reach out to them with something, right? But when you're already getting it and you have it already to spread out, and then you like using too, it's just nothing returning to your girl, right? So it gets old, and it got old on him. And I just told him like, well, camarada, have you gotten any of my peers from up there? And he said, yeah, they've been on me about it. And what have you told them? Man, I've been telling them this, and that. And I told him, why you dragging them along? Why you making up things? When you decide to tell them really what's going on and that you're not able to till you find another mullah, they're smart individuals. You're not going to be able to fool them, and they're going to know you've been lying up to them all this time, and you're going to have problems. But again, I disculpa. I don't mean to butt in and what's none of my business. I'm just relaying the message, right? But I ain't going to answer T for about a week. My advice is for you tonight to get at who you need to get up there and explain what's going on. I don't want to be the one that tells to you without you explaining yourself beforehand. 'Cause it's gonna put you in a bad spot too, and I don't want to do that. So we left it at that, right? I don't know what he told them individuals, right? The Pilis up there, like I said, there was a few Pilis involved, right? And they took it wrong. Just like I told them, they took it wrong. They felt lied to, dragged along, and it's facts. I know the homie didn't want to lose his position, wanted to stay in goods with them, but at least in these times, right, when everybody was slammed, they were more understanding to things like this. They knew you were a good individual. If you found a pipeline to hit, you weren't going to forget about them. So they gave you more than anything a pass. But now a whole bunch of different angles are going to be taken against them because of the lies. It wasn't a week or two. It happened throughout, we'll just say a month, right? And I did my report, right? I got at him, hey, did you do that? Simon, all right. I did my report, send up, and the answer was, okay, stay trucha for the answer. So when I got that, I'm a appeal, I already knew it was all bad for the vato. So when it came down, that they wanted us to teach them a lesson. Basically, it wasn't going to be have to go no good, but they did want it in whack for stringing them along and for lying to them. Anywhere a man's worth, how much they stay true to their palabra, right? Honesty overall, especially in the sensitive things, right? Where anything could take your career. So I wasn't surprised when it came down to go ahead and whack them, but it was just a checada to make sure you hit him and let him know afterwards, hey, he was still good. It was just because of this and this and that. So, like I mentioned before, when people were in touch with Billy's or they had anything to do with Billy's, I went myself. And at that time, I took G with me from T Flats. We went, of course, we didn't give them the heads up because, first off, even though it's such a cara, you don't know how they're going to take it, right? No one. So we did what we were supposed to do. Then we told them, and the homie said, "All right, Simon, gracias." He even went in, patched up, on his own, everything. Came back out to yard, and he lasted about 2 days, and then it's like he had a change of heart, you know, or maybe it was his girl, right? It was things got to change or whatever. He tried to work it out with his girl, but he walked into the program office and he took that walk of shame through the middle of the yard, right, with four COs escorting him to the hole. He basically locked it up. So the homie G after this, he was a doer, you know. After Ironwood, he went to Calipat, he went to Kern, ended up in High Desert, and he was still doing things for Terco. So he would eventually, of course, get validated. Like I said, everyone's telling me. But the inlook on this one is don't make promises. Remember, a promise ain't a to appeal to another homie. Hey, homie, you know, this, and that. I could do this and that. It's gonna happen like this. Palabra. I give you my palabra. You don't gotta give your palabra. The minute it leaves your mouth, that's your palabra. You gotta make sure you know what comes out your mouth. And that's the end look. Be careful. There's a lot of that. Believe me, I met a lot of guacamayas, false individuals that get dealt with in prison because they get to where you're at, and you're doing your thing, and they get there talking about, oh yeah, I'm doing things for so and so, and I met so and so, and I was here with so and so. So when you do that, unfortunately, he could become a threat. So to secure yourself, you run a make on him, right? And when it comes back that is using Peely's names in vain, he's gonna get whacked and removed. So always be trucha on what comes out of individual's mouth. Most importantly, be careful with what comes out of yours. What don't get said can be used against you. So that's the end look. Now, changing the topic a little bit, allow me to clarify it on Woody. People took it as I said Mitchell was a weenie. First and foremost, I never meant it like that. Now, I said he went out like a weenie. That I did say. But I know for a fact it's because he was all spawned out on meth. You know, it's just like Coyote from Fontana. Why would he take out the homie, pull the mission to take out someone, then right away lock it up afterwards? It was just that type of holiday makes your head starts seeing individuals with force on outside your cell or next to you in the bed and stuff. It's we aren't even supposed to use it inside. It was against the rules and regulations. But again, it was a time in courtroom where everyone was on it because that's what was coming in. But first off, I know the places Mitch had was doing things for Billy's, did everything correct. He would eventually get validated, you know, and I know he volunteered to move with one of his cellies to whack him out because he has something coming. I know about his lawyer, the way he whacked him. I know about something good Hollis he did in prison. Same as Woody. It's a shame what Baby Paya did, but Baby Paya had to secure himself. But yes, Nietzsche went out, sorry to say it, as a weenie, right? Because he was all tweaked out. That's why when he checked in and told, because he did tell where things were at, few days that he left and that material got out of the system, he came back and tried to take the blame off of them individuals he threw the squad on to get caught with fierros and other things. Squad didn't buy it. There was no going back for Mitch, excuse me, So he went on his way back to the TSU. But again, Mitchell was with it 100%. I know some good missions he pulled. I know who he was answering to. I know who he was taking care of. They were all pushing an agenda. All three brothers. Same with Woody. See, the misunderstanding with Woody was that he had kept, or more so that he has had to be sending some feria and jale somewhere to a pili, and there was miscommunication that reached Corcoran, that reached Baby Paya, that he was lying about sending that out to that pili, and if he was lying again, that automatically meant he had to be whacked out. Now, Baby Paya could not wait because if it was true and he left his cell, it was gonna fall back on him, right? That's why it happened, what it happened, and it was unfortunate. But again, clarifying when Mitch was doing his thing in the system, he was with it 1,000%. What his downfall was to be single cell and to start tweaking every day for weeks on end. You know, he was a good individual. He had a long history at Clecha, right? Lalo, he would go to the fairs and he would be the one to make it all the way up, right? But regardless, you know, Mitch did go out backwards. You cannot take that from him either, right? And a lot of people say, hey, when individuals go out that way, nothing you done matters. And that's true to a sense. But in a sense of, there's individuals that do many good things that you can't really say that. That's why I want to clear this up. Mitchell was a good individual. Who knows where you would have been right now if he would have kept away from that. But anyways, that was my clarifying it. And Woody, yeah, he got semi-paralyzed. Not too long ago, I heard he has better movement and everything. So I'm glad, Again, all this I didn't know about their childhood documentaries or none of that, right? When I had conversations with Miget, which is the one I conversated with the most, we never talked about that. It was always in-house business that needed to be taken care of. But with this said, please stay trucha always with what's being said to you as to what comes out. Believe me, when you're there, every word is being analyzed to the dot. But most importantly, if you already made it in a stage to make sure to get out of the gutter, stay true to yourself. Most importantly, stay true to your loved ones. That's the other look on this one. The things that inside we lose touch with and we put our loved ones through to where we lose them being there. Again, my love and prayers to everyone.